The week's end top stories at NBR. Big breakfast name may be leaving. A positive trading result for Briscoe's group. International education providers react to border changes. And there's more coming right up. Kia ora and welcome to NBR This Week. The latest business stories from the authority in New Zealand business news since 1970, nbr.co.nz, and a look back over the week's top stories from our daily video business news bulletin, NBR Today. It's Friday, February 4th. I'm Paul Brennan. Thanks again for joining us. Competition among breakfast broadcasters looks increasingly gladiatorial in 2022, but one of the field of battle's biggest names may be leaving. Sources have told NBR that breakfast anchor John Campbell, who's been with TVNZ's morning show since May 2019, is to be taken off the show at some stage and given a mandate to rove in a role akin to former stablemate Patrick Gower at Newshub. Campbell did not respond to a request for comment. It's understood the station is in talks with Al Jazeera English presenter and former reporter and producer at 3 News, Kamal Santamaria, to replace Campbell on the breakfast couch. Santamaria did not respond to a request for comment either. Chorus has signed new service agreements with Downer and Universal Communications Group, UCG, for the build, maintenance and connection to its fibre and copper network from April 2022. The pair are existing providers alongside Ventia, but the latter only retains responsibility for the remaining fibre rollout to about 40,000 premises and will also complete the West Coast and Southland fibre network extensions. The Downer contract is for 3 years for all services, while UCG's contract is for 7 years for all services in Auckland, Northland and the Waikato, and 3 years for fibre connection elsewhere in the country. NZX and ASX-listed retailer Briscoe Group reported today, Friday, that it expects net profit after tax to reach approximately $87 million, which is higher than the forecast range given in November of between $73.2 and $85 million. If achieved, the forecast would be a 20% increase from the previous year's NPAT. Managing Director Rod Duke was not willing to provide more comment on the NPAT forecast until its full-year results are released in March. The retailer, which operates Briscoe's, Rebel Sport and Living and Giving stores, published the full-year and fourth-quarter sales this morning, Friday morning, for the 52 weeks between February 1st, 2021 and January 30, 2022. Full-year sales totalled $744.4 million during the year, an increase of 7.97% compared to the comparable period the previous year. International education providers say the planned border reopening will set their sector on a recovery path after enduring a world of pain that has caused downsizing and hibernation of dozens of players, including the country's biggest private international educator, and job losses in the thousands. There's agreement that post-COVID the sector would look different, but opinion is divided on the role of online and blended online in-person learning in the new landscape. Since the borders closed in March 2020, the government has made border exceptions for 3 cohorts of international students, totalling 2,250. Independent Tertiary Education New Zealand, I-10's chair, Craig Musson, said the sector body wanted minimal restrictions on the type of students who come under the first 5,000, and certainly about visa processing times. The full details of those stories and more are at nbr.co.nz right now. I'm Paul Brennan. This is NBR This Week. A look back now at the week's top NBR business stories from our daily business video news bulletin, NBR Today. From Tuesday, disciplinary action appealed. A disciplinary decision relating to 2 chartered accountants charged with negligence and breaching ethics codes in relation to the audits of 2 NZX-listed companies will be appealed tomorrow, Wednesday. But the New Zealand Institute of Chartered Accountants Disciplinary Tribunal's initial decision on the charges first aired more than a year ago. A Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand spokesperson told NBR the decisions to which the appeals related were not yet publicly available. NZICA's Professional Conduct Committee was represented by Terry Sissons, while the members were represented by David Jones QC. It's NBR This Week, the week's top business stories from NBR's daily video news bulletin, NBR Today. From Wednesday, billionaire on housing development bandwagon. Billionaire and NBR lister Graham Hart has branched into the Auckland residential real estate market, paying top dollar for rundown houses with development potential in the Mount Wellington area of Auckland. Property records show newly incorporated subsidiaries of Hart's company Fernbrook Investments went on a buying spree in October and November last year. On October 19th, the government introduced the Resource Management Enabling Housing Supply and Other Matters Amendment Bill to remove constraints on urban intensification in major cities. The bill was passed on December 20. Real estate agent Glenn Foster of Hart said the area's zoning and the easing of resource consent rules was driving demand for properties. It's NBR This Week, the week's top business stories from NBR Today. From Thursday, Air New Zealand puts on extra seats. Air New Zealand expects to have more than 300 flights available between New Zealand and Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane and the Gold Coast for the month of March alone, but they're unlikely to be populated by tourists, given continued self-isolation requirements for inbound travellers. The airline's chief customer and sales officer, Leanne Garrity, said it would adjust its flight schedule further once it has a clearer view of the level of demand, adding it's confident there will be seats available for those who need them. Air New Zealand has suffered under border restrictions, with revenue earned from international travellers cut markedly over the nearly 2-year era of MIQ requirements, and a planned capital raising continually delayed as its share price reflects COVID-19's effects. This is NBR This Week. Now we're up to Friday's top story. Omicron and housing market anxiety are hammering aged care stocks, having slid 12% as an industry since the start of 2022. The NZX-listed retirement providers Oceania, Ryman, Somerset, Radius and Arvida have all fallen since the start of the calendar year, with the 12% drop trailing behind the S&P NZX 50 index, which has declined 6%. Ryman was the biggest decliner from $12.40 on January 5 to a closing price of $12.12 a share yesterday, Thursday, a 20% drop, followed by Oceania down 13% to $1.17 a share, then Somerset down 11% to $12.26 a share. The full details of those stories and more are at nbr.co.nz right now. This weekend at NBR, In Fact or Fiction on Saturday, Brent Edwards and Grant Walker discuss some of the issues of the week. On Sunday, in his weekly book review, Neville Gibson looks at a scholarly study of the origins of inequality. And our new Playing the Ball column by Martin Devlin debuts Monday. I'm Paul Brennan. Thanks for watching and listening to NBR This Week. Have a great weekend and join me again from Tuesday from around lunchtime for the morning's NBR trending stories, then again from around 5:30 for another NBR Today.